Welcome to Indie Thinker with Reed Uberman. You're about to make the jump from the dishonest mainstream media into free and independent thought from key thought leaders on the subjects of culture, causes, politics, and faith.
Hurt a lot of people.
You can't keep going the way you've been going.
Help me.
Sam Childers was a former Outlaws gang member and a drug addict until his life-changing conversion to faith in Christ took him on a journey that utilized his former life of violence into a mission in East Africa to rescue children being turned into soldiers by the LRA, the Lord's Resistance Army. His unapologetic use of force to rescue children earned him the moniker the Machine Gun Preacher.
This place does not need more guns.
Why don't you fight the evil in this place your way and let me fight it mine?
On the show today, you'll hear how Sam's life story was turned into a big-budget Hollywood film starring Gerard Butler, the place a pastor with a gun has in the world, the personal toll rescuing children and the most dire consequences has had on him, and what the Angels of East Africa is up to now that the LRA has been pushed back.
Welcome to Indie Thinker. Thank you so much, Sam Childers, for being here on the podcast today.
All right, good to be here.
Yeah, man. So I was telling you as you were walking in that this is kind of a bucket list in this way that I put together a small magazine, like a publication, to kind of explain to Indie Thinker what it was and what we were trying to achieve. And so I put on one of the pages a group of people that I really wanted to have be a part of Indie Thinker, like guests that we would bring in for the podcast and even bring in live. And so have a page of pictures of different kind of like the people I wanted to have on, and you're one of those pictures on there.
Very cool.
So,
like to hear that.
yeah. So absolutely an honor. You're a hero of mine. I love what you're doing. I originally, probably like most people, I got turned on to what you were doing by the movie that you guys made, and just ever since then, I followed what you guys are doing in the Sudan. Wow. And just super excited to be able to talk with you about that and share that with people today.
It's great.
Yeah, man. So before we jump into that, we are not social distancing. I have had COVID. You have had COVID.
Yeah,
so.
I had it bad, man. Almost died. You know.
Really?
Yeah, I was really bad off. I was in the hospital 4 days in Africa, and in Africa, they don't mess around there. It's almost like they start giving you the cocktails that our president talked about, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Trump talked about, well, you know, they gave me cocktails and I'm ready to go. And people put him down for how he was talking. But I'm going to be honest with you. When they started giving me antibiotics and they started shooting me up with steroids, I was like Superman. I mean, yeah, so until it wore off, then they had to give me more. But on the fifth day, my breathing was so bad, they were getting ready to put me on a breathing machine.
Wow.
And I thought, oh, my God, this is serious, you know. So I was getting ready to take my phone and make some videos because they wouldn't let my wife in to see me. I could talk to people, but I couldn't see no one. So I was getting ready to do videos because I didn't think I was going to come out of it. And that night, about 3 a.m, God came into my room and said, you don't need to make your videos. And about 7 a.m, 8 a.m, the doctor came in and he said, wow, what happened to you, man? And he started talking. He said, listen, if your vitals keep on getting better, he said, we might send you home this evening. And so they ended up sending me home that evening. But see, in Africa is different. When you got COVID, you have to be under health care and monitored. Mm-hmm. But they will allow you to go home and bring the doctor into your home. So I, even though I went home, I was still under full quarantine, health cared, and monitored by the government. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. So that almost sounds like they have some things that are a little bit more progressive than what we're doing even here in the States, which you wouldn't expect in Africa.
Well, Uganda is actually, and I don't know what they are now, but over the last few months, they were one of the safest countries in Africa to live in. They only had like 200 and some deaths, you know, from the COVID. You know.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, and their success rate for people coming out of it is just unbelievable. You know. Yeah.
All right, so I'm so anxious to jump into some topics that kind of surround some of that. So we'll circle back to kind of like the church and America, but I want to provide the context for people that don't know you well, of kind of like who you are and what you're doing.
Right.
So let's kind of, I'll do this by way of the movie, and then you tell me what's real, and then kind of how that worked out. So Gerard Butler plays you, and by the way, for those who don't know, but they probably do, that Olympus Has Fallen, 300, really famous, great actor. Played you really, really well.
But if you know Gerard, you know I'm way better looking than Gerard Butler.
Yeah, I heard you say this in another podcast, and you got way better facial hair than him.
Right.
So, agreed. Plus, I don't want to get punched. I've seen some of your stuff. So needless to say, so he plays you in a movie about your life and how you came to rescuing child soldiers and children that have been abducted by Coney and his men in the LRA and all that stuff. So you go on a mission trip.
Yeah.
And on that mission trip, I love this scene in the film. On that mission trip, some of the missionaries are going to kind of like do some touristy type stuff, going into the town or whatever.
Right.
And instead you decide to go into the most dangerous area in the Sudan and see what's going on for yourself.
Right. Yeah.
So tell us how kind of that
took
place.
Keep in mind that a movie when a Hollywood does a movie, they always say it's based on a true story. Uh-huh. So there's a lot of changes.
Sure.
But that part was definitely true, you know. Okay, to start with, I knew I was to be a missionary, but when I went to the mission field, I had every reason not to go. Mm-hmm. I had a successful construction company. I had a camper trailer. I had a home. I had a fishing boat. Every reason not to go. But I went because I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll get God off my back with this calling by going to the mission field. Yeah. And then when I got there, I got in the middle of a civil war. And I knew there was something I could do, and I knew it was to save children. I don't believe the first time that I picked up a firearm, I don't believe I did anything different than you would have done or anybody else would have done. You know, you're not going to sit there and die when you can stand up and fight.
Right.
And the only thing different that I did that most people wouldn't have done is I never left. I stayed there.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is, you know, sometimes we don't realize that when you start doing saving children, you know, it's kind of like addiction. I was a drug addict. I was, you know, shooting up cocaine and heroin. And we know that that's a strong addiction. It's hard to get rid of. And I believe that what happened to me was I got addicted. Mm-hmm. You know, because of the children. You know, I seen their faces, and you know, people will look at my pictures and they'll start to cry. If a picture will bring you to tears, imagine walking the walk. Yeah. You know, so I mean, I could never leave. You know. So,
and by the way, I got to just insert this at the beginning of the film. I know this is Hollywood too, but it's actually probably way worse. At the beginning of the film, they give us Americans and anybody watching a feeling of what's going on in Sudan and what Coney's forces are doing to children and to families. They take a little boy and say, I'm going to shoot your brother if you don't kill your mother.
And that was based on the truth. That little boy in the beginning of the movie is still one of my children. His name's James. And James, we left the ministry. He's about 24, 25. He left the ministry about a year ago, and he recently come back. He started drinking. I don't have a problem with somebody having a drink. Sure. But when drink has you, then that's a problem. So he left the ministry, and he recently just come back. So I'm really happy that he come back home.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but James was based on a true story. You know.
So you can't see that stuff and turn away in good conscience, especially as a Christian. But just, I mean, God, anybody. Yeah. You see this man taking children, abducting them, bad enough, but then militarizing them, putting guns in the hands of 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and teaching them to kill people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And usually what they would do is the first thing, they would force them to kill their parents. And a lot of people say, well, how could a child even think of doing that? What you got to remember is they might have 2 or 3 children there that are brothers and sisters, and the parents over here, and they'll put the gun to the children's head and they'll tell the parents, you tell them to kill you or we're going to kill them slowly in front of you. So the parent is actually pleading with the child. No parent wants to see their child killed.
Yeah.
So the parent's pleading with the child, it's okay, it's okay. And then when the child kills them, the child's mind is so brainwashed and so far out there, they believe there's nothing more I can do in life that's going to hurt me. So the child becomes mad. The child becomes brainwashed. And that's what Coney would do. And there was a lot of times after that, he would get them chewing cud. And cud is like a leaf, like it's like a speed, to get you all hyped up,
Yeah.
But he was a coward, He was a coward. He was fighting a cause. He couldn't get grown-ups to end up joining him to fight the cause he was fighting, And but anyways, we chased him out of the country, chased him into the Congo, and recently I just heard in the past month that he died. I don't believe that he died of some type of disease or something. I don't believe that he's dead. I won't believe it till I see his head.
Yeah. That could be propaganda because as far as I could tell, he was still alive. He's in his 60s now, but yeah. So does he still have LRA forces in the Sudan?
Yes, he's still doing the same thing he did. He's in the Congo where he's in an area that is just jungle, And a lot of people say, well, why can't we get him? Well, I always say, well, why did it take us over a decade to get bin Laden when we have all the technology, and he wasn't in the jungle, so. But he's in the Congo. He still does the same thing, not near to the extent that he was doing in northern Uganda and South Sudan.
Yeah, thankfully.
Plus, you got to remember, President Bashir, the one that was financing him from northern Sudan, he has been arrested. So a lot of things have changed, But what I want people to look at now, a lot of people might say, well, there's no need for us to sow into this ministry. What you got to remember, for a country that was in war for decades and decades, it takes at least 20 years to rehabilitate the people.
Yeah.
So the war is still going on, but it's a war within people's minds. So we're still there working. 20 plus years later, we're still there working with the children that are young adults now, getting them to function and be able to have a family and live, live life.
So there's this old saying, like, you can take the person off the street, but you can't take the street out of the person. And then there's like this biblical analogy for that too, right? Is because Moses has taken his people out of slavery, but they're still living in slavery inside of them. Right. So so it sounds like that's what you're saying is, like, when you get these kids or minister to these people, maybe even the workers, there's still so much of what took place, so much of that oppression that you're having to help re-educate these guys, defrag their whole mindset from the life that they were living before.
Yeah, and everybody in East Africa, if you're a child and you lived during the Coney War, or you lived during one of these civil wars in South Sudan, everybody was affected. Even if you lived on the other side of the country, you were still affected from war. Maybe you didn't get schooling because, like of the economy falling apart. But when you're living in that country, even if you wasn't in the war, your life was still affected by war.
Absolutely. So that said, I want to jump a little bit back into the movie just because absolutely fascinating to me. So what was it like to have a movie made about your life?
The first time when the movie was done, they flew me to Hollywood to watch it at a movie premiere. And there was a few thousand people there, big movie stars, man. I mean, it was like a dream that I had to keep pinching myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. But what happened to me when I started watching the movie, everything that wasn't in the movie is what was coming into my mind. And to this day, I don't think I ever watched the movie and concentrated on the movie.
Yeah.
It might sound crazy.
No, that makes sense.
But when I watch the movie, I think of everything, like there'll be a scene come on, and then I think of really what happened. And so I cry through the whole entire movie because I'm remembering what you're not even seeing or hearing about,
Yeah. And what was it like meeting Gerard? Because I know you've met him.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know who he was.
Really?
Yeah. At first they wanted Russell Crowe.
Okay.
And Russell Crowe and me are more of a same size, same height and everything, build a lot the same, And then we couldn't get him, and so I was in a meeting, and my daughter was in that meeting with me, and they said, well, we think that Gerard Butler might be coming in to play your part. And I'm like, who's Gerard Butler? What did he play any big movies? And my daughter's like, oh.
Had he done 300 at that time?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
my daughter's freaking out. She's shaking. Oh, Gerard Butler. And then she just stops and she says, why would he want to play my dad? But I teased Gerard because I'd done a lot of events with him. I'd done a lot of talk shows with him. I'd done a lot of interviews with Gerard. And I'd always tease him because I'd always say, well, I'm better looking than him. So one day we're in a talk show and he says, wait a minute. Why do you always say you're better looking than me? I said, you remember one thing. You wanted to be me. I didn't want to be you.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, but he was a good guy.
Yeah.
I don't believe at the time that anyone else could have played the part. There is a part 2, Machine Gun Preacher, getting ready to go into production.
Is he going to be in it?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
The first movie was a low-budget movie, and it was $33 million movie. The second movie is going to be 25 to 30, somewhere around the same.
Good. I call it the best Christian film I've ever seen, but people will be surprised to hear F words in it. And violence and stuff, but it's great.
What the problem is Gerard has become a $16 million man.
For sure.
If you want him in a movie, it's $16 million. So I would love to see Gerard play it.
We got to get this podcast to him and past his agents, and then get straight to Gerard.
I'm actually trying to deal with him now because he has a production company.
Okay.
And see, what people don't realize, the movie Machine Gun Preacher didn't make any money in the theater. But it made millions on rentals. Nowadays movies don't make big money in the theaters.
Right. Especially
they
now.
make big money on rentals.
Yeah.
So it made millions of dollars on rentals. So I'm actually reaching out to his company. He has a production company, but we were dealing with some people last year, and there was talk that Nicolas Cage.
Okay.
Could be in the second movie, So
Okay.
we'll see what happens. The thing that I'm going to make sure is I don't care who's in it. I just want paid.
Yeah.
And so and I want my money up front, okay? And we're not gonna go into that backside stuff, okay? We know what that is.
Yeah.
So, but no, I want paid for the movie. I never got paid all my money from the first movie. They still owe me a lot of money. And I think it's pretty sad, and I say it every time I do an interview, it's pretty sad that they do a movie of one man's struggle to save children.
Yeah.
And then they don't pay him.
Yeah.
So I understand that the movie didn't make money in the theater, but it made millions on DVD rentals.
It's really fantastic.
And it's still, right now, if you go to Amazon Prime, you go to HBO, you know what's so crazy? The movie is a 10-year-plus movie, and it's rated number 2 old movies to watch.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just had my secretary the other day. She was Googling stuff, and she goes, oh, my God, Sam, this movie is still number 2. She went to another site. What is it, Hulu? Hulu, all of these places, the movie is still rated number 2 for old movies.
Yeah, I was looking at it the other day, too. I actually got it on YouTube. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it on Amazon Prime, Hulu.
Yep.
I think you might even be able to get it on HBO. Like,
Yeah.
if you've got a subscription with HBO, it's on there, too. It's a really fantastic movie. And again, I'm going to be a little bit unkind here, I suppose, but you probably agree. The vast majority of Christian movies out there are so poorly acted, so poorly written.
Yeah.
And this movie just seems
Well, it was real. Now, for me, I believe they could have cut down on the cussing in the movie.
Sure.
Because, okay, number one, I never did talk like that. If you notice, though, there's a lot of cussing, but there's no GD in the movie. There's no using the Lord's name in vain.
Did you have the ability to kind of...
I told them I would boycott the movie because they had every other word, not just the F word. They had GD. And, but see, you could only pull that card once or twice.
Yeah.
And I just flat out told him, I said, listen, I never talked like that. Because, see, even when I was an addict, I still believed. I still knew God was real. I was raised in a Christian family. So I wasn't going to let them use a word that wasn't me, you know.
Yeah.
So I told them I'll boycott the movie. So it's not in there. Now, there's a lot of F words in there, but let's be honest. The average Christian, Christian usually says those words when the lawnmower won't start or on their way to church Sunday morning, you know. Yeah.
Not me, of course. Maybe you, Sam. But hey, I got to ask you this too, and forgive me if this is a little bit of a sensitive topic. That scene, Gerard Butler and Michael Shannon are in a car, and there's a guy in the back. That scene of the
that was true.
Is that
true? What happened though? The true part of that is the guy that was driving, and I was in the passenger seat. He put the knife to my buddy's throat. He put a knife to his throat, and he said, "Take me to Bina." And so we're all drunk and everything, and it all happened exactly the way it showed. I knew the only thing I could do, because he had to draw on everyone, is I'll make him think I'm going to kill us all. So I just stuck my foot over on the gas and pushed it to the floor. And he's screaming, stop this car, stop this car. So when I seen that he didn't have control anymore, I took the knife from him and stabbed him several times. The truth was, I got on a Greyhound bus about 2 days after that, because we dumped the body way out in the bush, you know, in the woods. And that happened outside of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. So I thought I killed him. I got on a Greyhound bus, and I went from city to city buying different tickets, thinking I was going to, you know, hide myself. Back in those days, there was no cell phones, no internet, no computers, you know. Yeah. And so I made it to Orlando, Florida. A year later, I called my buddy, and I was talking to him. They said, "Hey, where you at, Sam?" And I said, "I'm around, you know." And they said, "Well, man, when you coming back?" And I said, "You know, I can't come back." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I killed that Indian." And they said, No, you didn't kill him. You know, somebody picked him up and took him to a hospital. He's okay. But what was so crazy is years down the road, when I gave my life to the Lord, I started preaching. And when I started preaching, I went back. I still to this day go back to Minnesota. And I went back to the area on the reservation to where that guy wanted me to take him. And I tried to look for this guy. Yeah, I tried to look for him just to apologize. Yeah. But I preach every 2 to 3 years. I'm back in the Minnesota area. And usually when I start preaching, the first thing that I do is I apologize if there's anyone in that church that I ever hurt or harmed or said something bad to. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah.
I just love your heart, and we've seen it a couple of times as you've been talking with us today, just how sensitive you are, but then how much of a bad A you are too. Because I don't think and this is the thing, is that Christians assume pacifism ignorantly. They think that Jesus was a pacifist and Christians should be pacifists, all in ignorance, because they don't read the whole Bible. They read a verse of Scripture here, a verse of Scripture there, but they don't read chapters, and they certainly don't read the whole Bible.
I always say I don't think he was singing "Bringing in the Sheaves" when he was flipping tables over and
making a whip and whipping people.
Right, yeah. You know,
it's hard for us to kind of, again, come back to this, to kind of square that God makes people like you. But I firmly believe that that's true. Yeah. The best way I can think about this is there's a scene in American Sniper that just sticks out to me. Great movie if you've never seen it.
Yeah, no, seen it quite a few times. Love it.
But there's a scene in the beginning where Chris Kyle's dad is speaking to him when he's a little boy. Yeah. And he says there's 3 kind of people in this world. There's sheep, there's wolves, and there's sheepdogs. Yeah. And I believe God creates sheepdogs, guys like you who, like, in case of emergency, break this glass and get us Sam Childers out here to help people, because we need them. And it's undoubtable that that's exactly what you've been doing out there in the Sudan and East Africa.
One of the things that I want people to look at, I mean, because I'm still there and we still need support, we still need help, is I want people to look at, I never left, I never quit. But then look how big the work has got. You know, we have 5 orphanages. Today, in the middle of COVID, we're feeding over 8,500 meals a day. we've drilled over 6 wells over the years. You know, one well saves over 2,000 people.
Wow.
We have repaired dozens and dozens of wells. Last year alone, the 23rd of December, we gave away 40-plus ton of rice, plus butchered 15 cows and gave people Christmas dinner. That was in the bush, you know. Earlier in the year, we gave away another 40-some ton of rice, you know. So our organization, we never left, and we're still doing the same work, saving people's lives, down to the Bush Kid Project, you know.
Yep.
Dewormed over 2,000 children in 4 months,
Wow.
you know. So all of that work is still going on. Built 7 schools, building the 8th school now, 5 orphanages. You know, we never slowed down. We're still there, you know. And it cost me a lot of things in my family, you know, because there was a point in time where a lot of family members thought, okay, you became famous, you got a lot of money. You know, it was proven I had over $30 million go through my hands over a 12-year period. Let's take $1 million, let's put it in the bank, and let's stay home.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was even a time my own mom thought I should have done it. But I just told him, there's no way I can live here in America.
It's the way God. I think it's the way God's made you. It's just that we have to understand this. Is that, like, I was talking to Daryl Strawberry on the podcast, and I told him this. I think God allowed you to experience your fame, not so that you could be famous, but so that you could drop all the way to the bottom, so that you could speak to everybody in between.
Yeah.
And so, just to give a little bit of background, so let's do talk about that. Let's talk about what you're doing. We'll get into how you started, but what are you doing in the Sudan? What is the Angels of East Africa really all
We're
about?
actually in 3 countries of East Africa. We're working in Ethiopia, Uganda, and South Sudan. Now, we have a lot of work going on inside of Uganda. As you know, Ethiopia is in the middle of a civil war now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the northern part of the country, they're in all-out
Now, what are those
rebel
tensions
war.
about?
There again, tribalism. You know, the same thing that goes on here in America. We just don't want to
Left
call
and
it
right.
tribalism. Yeah, you know. So, but South Sudan is still very unstable. We have the big orphanage from the movie that was made almost, I think it's starting on 11 years now. From that movie, we still have that orphanage is still working. It has never been shut down in 20-plus years,
Awesome.
even during the war. So there's about 180, 190 kids at that orphanage, and it's run by Robbie Walker. Robbie Walker is someone that came on board with me probably about 6 years ago, and he's like the chief over that orphanage. I visit it about every month. I run the projects in Uganda, northern Uganda mainly. We have 5 orphanages that run from Ethiopia, South Sudan, all the way into Uganda.
How many kids do you got?
About 350 kids.
Okay.
Yeah, but now something that we started doing about 12, 13 years ago, maybe even a little longer, God said to me, if you're just going to build another orphanage, why don't you just go home? You know, what a lot of people don't realize, unless you know what's happening in a third world country. Now, this is not our orphanage, but most orphanages, you have to leave at 15 years old.
Okay.
15 years old, you're out. More than 70% of those children end up in prostitution because they don't have a skill, they're not fully educated, they don't have anything else, you know, and that's one of the only skills that you can go into and not have no, you know, experience.
Yeah.
So God said that you need to do something else for these children. So we're very big into education. We've built 7 schools over the years. We're building number 8th school now. But there's a lot of kids like me. All the schooling in the world wasn't going to help me.
Right.
My parents would have been very stupid to put thousands of dollars into education for me. And my dad knew it. So what he did for all 3 of us boys, there's 3 of us brothers, is he taught us the skill to work with our hands. Mm-hmm. So I opened up my first restaurant about 12 years ago.
Okay.
In this restaurant, we had over 200 children go through it, learning skill. And I say children. Anyone under the age of 25, 26 is a child to me. So they went through learning to be a waitress, prep cook, a cook. But then, the problem with us as Christians, and not just Christians, as humans, we'll start to do something and we see it's working and we get satisfied. And then we want to stop or we back off. I've always been the kind of guy, if I'm doing something and it's working, I'm going to do more.
Yeah.
So then we bought a farm in northern Uganda. We have about 1,000-acre farm, and it's been flourishing unbelievable.
I saw that on social media.
Yeah, and then we started a truck stop, and right now we literally work over 500 people a day.
Wow.
So if you want to change a nation, I believe it begins with education, Jesus Christ, but teaching people a skill and a trade.
I love that.
Because when you do those things, what you're creating is structure. And when you make structure any country in the world, then you start changing that nation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have this feeling in America, and I know we don't have to go too deep into this, but we have this idea of evangelism in America, or how to shape a nation, make a difference.
Yeah.
It's just plant a church on the corner.
Yeah.
And I think it's so much bigger than that. And I think that's ultimately, I think that's why I started this podcast, is because I felt like the breadth of ministry, and I forget who said it, but perhaps this sums it up well, is that the breadth of ministry should encompass everything, that there's no place where the glory of God should not be felt.
Right.
And I absolutely think that what you're doing in terms of saying like education and giving people a job so that they don't have to resort to some of the things that they might otherwise do if they have a way of making income, a way of feeding their family and all that stuff.
Well, America used to be, and I'll say that again, used to be one of the greatest countries in the world. But we have ruined it with free money. We have ruined it.
It's relevant now.
We have literally created something, and it's kind of like a new lifestyle of living off the government. And it's coming down in generations after generation. There's a generational curse that needs to be broken in America. If you look at assistance that people's on, welfare, what people's on, it's coming down family member after family member, generation after generation is being on assistance. My dad used to say that welfare was created for the hard-working man that got into trouble. It wasn't created for people to get on and live on it.
Yeah.
But now the world has changed. There's so much free money out there, and people don't feel bad taking it. When I was a kid, there was what they called food stamps, and I know we're getting off track here, but I mean, there was what we called food stamps. But over the years, people got embarrassed to use them. You should be. So then they give them a credit card. I know a lot of people's going to be hitting on us talking like this,
That's good.
but they give you a credit card now so you don't feel embarrassed. Listen, we need to get a job. I'm 58 years old. My back hurts. Yeah, I mean, don't tell me you got a bad back. Get a job. My dad always said, if you got a bad back, work harder.
Yeah, obviously, there's nobody that could accuse you of being dispassionate about the plight of people, right? Like, that would be the stupidest thing on the planet to say that to somebody like you. But yeah, it was meant to be temporary. It was meant to help people in a tough spot so that they could get back on their feet, which, great. Absolutely. This is a little bit off subject too, but I'm curious as to the aftermath of all the free money we've been getting under
it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt anyone that lives off free money. It's going to affect the hardworking man. And I got a nephew that he follow all that stuff, and he says that our taxes for the hardworking man is going to go up to 39%.
Wow.
So there's going to be a big aftermath. But there's a lot of people that I feel bad for. I feel bad for the churches. What people don't realize, and you can do a little survey on this, there's churches foreclosing and closing the doors because they can't function because they were shut down. People wasn't paying tithes. People wasn't giving offerings.
Right.
And I asked the world, why? And I asked the world, what is wrong with you if you're a Christian? Because the government closed the doors, you're going to stop supporting the church? That is so wrong. Don't suspect God to bless you. Maybe you better go after the free money because God is not going to bless you. If our doors are closed because the government closed them, we still need to pay our tithes. We still need to keep our church doors open.
Agreed.
People don't understand this. Prosperity came through hard work. But nowadays, we believe that prosperity comes through handouts, and it doesn't. It comes through working hard. The only thing that I believe America needs to get back to is just respecting one another and realizing that our country, how we were founded on in God we trust, not in Allah we trust. I believe in freedom. If you want to serve Allah and Buddha, serve Allah and Buddha.
For sure.
But this country was founded on in God we trust. Let's get back to working hard.
Well, I just think we need to be honest about this. Like, you hear all the time the party of science, and science is everywhere right now because of the pandemic. The reality is when you look up at objective, observable things, the reality is we are now living in what is classified as a post-Christian nation. And when that wasn't the case, we weren't having some of the issues that we're having now. So I think an intellectually honest person, even if you're not a Christian, has to step back and say, did Christianity help us as a nation? And are we in a better place now that we've moved away from Christianity? I think it's objectively true that no, we are not.
No, I agree, man. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So in the film, you go out, you kind of separate from the other missionary group, and you see kind of what's happening. You also meet Ding, I think, at that point.
Ding
in time.
is still with me to this day.
That's awesome.
Now Ding is in he's in like the military there. He is a captain, I believe now, but he still works with our ministry, still helps our ministry out. Yeah.
All right, and so the thing for people to know, and this is where the machine gun preacher comes in, is that as you go out and you experience what's happening, and based upon your past with violence, but also your past with guns and stuff like that, you feel like God has called you to forcibly go rescue these kids, to go packing heat with arms to make sure that you protect these kids, rescue these kids, and do whatever is necessary to get them back.
Right, absolutely. Now, a lot of people, unless you follow us faithfully, on Facebook, people don't realize that I run and operate an armed security company. Mm-hmm. And I've been running that company for 14 years plus. So I am the only foreigner in all of history to own and operate an armed security company in East Africa.
Okay.
And I'm still there doing the same thing, So a lot of times people think, oh, he's just a crazy guy with a gun and he's going out there doing illegal things.
That's
no,
only 50% right.
Right. Now I'm still doing the same thing,
Yeah.
But now we're there to serve the people. But there's still a lot of Christians that say, well, I disagree. There shouldn't be no violence. There shouldn't be nobody with arms. But I always say to, like the religious person, the holiest thing in that Bible, the holiest thing in that book was what? The Ark of the Covenant. Mm-hmm. If you was unclean in any way and you brushed against that ark, you just die instantly. What went before the ark and what went after the ark? Mm-hmm. Security. Mm-hmm. So from the beginning of time, God had people guarding his things.
Yeah.
And so to this day, God has people guarding his things.
Yeah.
And that's his children.
This is so hard for people to understand. So let's talk about that for a little bit, because it's so hard for people to square a Christian who could kill, because they say thou shalt not kill, right?
Yeah.
And then they say turn the other cheek and all this stuff. So
but I think it says thou shalt not murder.
It does. Yeah. So the difference there, what's the difference there in your mind?
There's a big difference. I mean, murder is when you destroy another life for no reason at all. And I don't like to talk about violence or killing or anything like that. But I mean, you have children.
I do.
Okay. I have children. I have way more than you.
I've only got 2.
Yeah, I got 300 and some.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if somebody took your child, if somebody took your wife, if somebody took your mother, and they were going to do brutal things that I won't even mention here, would you do anything to rescue them?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I always tell people, people will say, but it's not my family. Jesus said, when he made it clear in Matthew, when they said, Lord, your brothers are here, your mother is here. And he said, "Who is my mother? Who is my brothers? Anyone that believes. So we got to get off of this color issue. I'm so sick of hearing color issues.
Yeah.
It's not funny. And so it's a life is a life.
Yeah.
A child is a child. I don't look at what religion that child is before I rescue them or feed them or give them clothes. I don't look at what color they are. This one's lighter than this one's blacker, this one. I don't look at none of that. We rescue children.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, as it should be. Which is such an ironic thing in America today, is because we are very outspoken against racism, especially it's in the news right now in a very prominent way,
Yeah.
as well we should be. But here's the other thing is we don't want to take into account the millions of babies that are aborted every single year.
Absolutely.
And the disproportionate amount of black babies that makes up.
But I don't even want to hear what goes on in America. I'm so thankful to live full time in Africa. Yeah. I'm married to an African girl, and I get a kick out of when she's here. When the American black will say, "I'm African American," my wife gets all excited, and she'll say, "Well, what tribe are you from?" And they start to get offended.
Yeah.
And she just tells them, "Well, you're not African.
Yeah.
You're American." What people don't realize, you don't walk up and say, "I'm Irish American," or "I'm Indian American," or "I'm Jewish American." If you're born here, you're American, all right? Just say, "I'm American," know? And then this thing of, and this is my wife speaking, and she can say it because she's black, okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, she'll say, there is no such thing as Black Lives Matters. All lives matter.
Yeah.
Nobody deserves to be mistreated. I don't care. And I think some of this stuff is going on in America. Yeah. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be stopped. But it needs to be done through all lives matter.
Yeah.
And I am, because I've dual citizen, I am a real African American.
I think that's funny. Yeah, I would suggest that I perhaps, and you, of course, but I know more about Africa than a lot of the people who call themselves African Americans. And I know that doesn't matter, but it's just kind of a silly thing. There's a documentary, by the way, people can catch your documentary on Amazon Prime if they have Amazon Prime. It's really good. And then there's a documentary that was done by Eli Still, I believe, that talks about how you classify your children when they're mixed, on forms and stuff for education and stuff. And I thought about that with my own kids because my kids are Mexican and they're Caucasian. Mm-hmm. Caucasian. So it's no. So what do I do? They are Mexican, but they were raised in America. I mean, by all intents and purposes, they're American. Yeah. So that whole thing is just kind of silly. It's a divisive tactic, really, just to separate people and cause us to tear each other apart.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that being said, the one of the things that I think is so important that I want to talk to you about, and you kind of brought it up, is what's going on in America right now. And I think it's interesting to talk to you about it just because you spend so much time in Africa and you almost have the luxury of, you have dual citizenship, but you almost have the luxury of being able to kind of look as an outsider on what's going on in America.
Really, to be honest with you, I'm ashamed when people in Africa and people from other countries of Africa or people from Germany that know me and they'll start asking me questions about what's going on in America, I'm almost ashamed to be American.
I get that.
Because some of the nonsense, like this last voting that went on, listen, okay, I don't care who you voted for. Whoever you voted for, you know what that's called? Freedom.
Yeah.
Okay? To start with, I'm a Trump guy. Now, if people can hack on me for that, I don't care. Don't email me. I don't care. That's called freedom.
Yeah.
If you voted for Biden, that's called freedom. But I can tell you this much. I'm a Christian, and there's two things that I will stand for. No one's going to take my firearm. No one, and I'm not going to vote for anyone that there's going to be a chance that they're going to vote, that they're going to push in full-term abortion.
Yeah.
If you're a Christian, we cannot stand for that, So do I think that there could have been a somebody else better than Trump. I don't think there was somebody else that was better than Trump. The world is in total chaos right now, But what I tell everyone, and I was at a thing in New York City, a fundraiser, and everybody there was Democrat. I mean, everybody. And
Surprise.
One of the questions they brought me up on the stage and started me off was politics. And I said, I want you to all listen before I speak my piece. We were founded on freedom. And freedom is, if you want to be Democrat, I'm not going to hack on you. And if I want to be Republican, freedom is you shouldn't hack on me. Freedom is that we can love one another and treat one another properly no matter what you believe in. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to believe in God, if you want to believe in Allah, if you want to believe in Buddha, I choose, me and my family, to believe in Jesus Christ. That's called freedom. Yeah. What was Jesus all about? Freedom. Mm-hmm. And that's what I stand for.
Yeah. But I think the problem with that is that you say that, and the reality is you come from a Christian worldview, and our world is moving further and further away from Christianity, and it's causing what we're seeing. Now, a lot of people, I even had this the other day, a lot of people say, well, you lost me at Christianity, blah, blah, blah. Why can't we just talk about, well, here's the reason we can't just talk about the issue is because there used to be an underlining value system, a foundation, if you will, underneath the principles of the American system, of our Constitution.
Right.
And the more we move away from that, isn't it interesting that we find ourselves canceling each other, fighting with each other online, bullying each other?
What do we end up losing? Freedom.
Yeah.
If you look, not being a Christian is part of freedom. Mm-hmm. Being a Christian, who you serve, how you're going to believe, it's all freedom. On every truck that I have here in America, on the back of it will say freedom fighters. Yeah. Because that's what I fight for. Yeah. And that's what we should want is freedom.
I just don't know if we even know what that word is anymore, to be honest with you. And I'm not trying to be coy. I'm sincere about this. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm just concerned for our nation in the way that it's going. And here's one of the things that kind of makes me this way is I don't know if you're familiar with Jim Gaffigan, but he's a comedian, kind of a clean comedian. He's Catholic. But he, and this is so old, you probably don't remember this commercial, but there was a commercial that had a bunch of dogs and animals and stuff, and it was for like some kind of like animal rights company or something like that. Anyway, and the Sarah McLachlan song's playing in the background, In the Arms of the Angel, and they show these up close shots of these sad dogs and these sad cats that are on the street and stuff like that. And he said there's still starving children in Africa, right?
Right.
And I love that joke, and he's probably able to get away with it because he's a comedian. But there's so much truth to what he just said. Yeah. You seeing some of the things that you've seen, and people need to go, if they haven't ever seen Machine Gun Preacher, and even if they have, they need to go watch it again. I watched it again just to kind of familiarize myself with the film. When you see that stuff, and I've seen it to some extent, you've seen it an incredible amount. When you see that stuff, you must just look at what's going on in America and think to yourself, you guys are fighting over men being able to play in women's sports, which bathroom you're supposed to be able to use, and there are children who are being killed.
Well,
in Africa.
We live in the country in the whole world that we live in is the most obese country in the world. Mm-hmm. Something happened the other day because I do feeding programs, and feeding programs mean so much to me. And we had to cut our feeding program back because of COVID. We went from 14,000 meals a day. We didn't cut no children's meals. Mm-hmm. Now we're down to about 8,500. We cut adult meals. But in my hometown, I just get home. I've only been home a few weeks, and I'm watching the news, and a lady pulls up in her car, and they're putting boxes of food in her car, and she's crying because she's saying, we can't hardly eat because of COVID. She's so big she can't get out of the car.
Yeah.
Come on. We live in the most obese country in the world. There's soup kitchens on every city corner. Every small town is giving out food. Now because of COVID, we think people are being generous because of COVID. Listen, they're all back charging. What people don't realize, these big supermarkets that's giving away food and stuff, they're back charging the government for that food.
Yeah.
You know, but people don't need food. You know, we're doing now in Africa, we got a project going on called the Bush Kid Project. I don't like to be in the city. I love being in the bush. I love going deep into the bush where there is no help. The only hope the people has is us. So we're going in and we're treating these children. I'm taking doctors. I'm taking a blood lab. We're going in with medicine, doctors, a government person, and treating people, malaria, typhoid, deworming children. We are saving lives. Yep. And people in America, they can't hardly relate to that because the poorest of the poor can get a child treated. You know, there's no child in America going to suffer unless they got a deadbeat mom and dad. People don't want to hear that. You know, I was at a church the other day, and a guy come outside the church, and he said, well, I believe we need to be working here in America to help our people. And I said, tell me people that need help. I said, we do a lot. Our ministry does a lot in Pennsylvania. We work with people that are addicted with drugs. We gave out 200 and some Thanksgiving meals. We gave out almost 300 Christmas meals. So our church does a lot in the state of Pennsylvania. But what more does Americans need? We got all the help. You know, you can be poor and you got the best health care there is, dental care, you know, everything. The children that we're treating on the Bush Kids Project, in 4 months' time, we treated nearly 800 children, malaria only. What people don't realize, in Africa itself, every 2 minutes, a child dies malaria. Every hour, 50 children. Some surveys say Africa only, 500,000 children die every year, malaria. Yeah.
That's nuts. I mean, I think we just need to, I understand, like, just to be charitable here, I understand people don't know. They out of sight, out of mind. This is a different country, so people don't see what's going on. And what happens in America, obviously, it does matter for the rest of the world. But I want to ask you about your personal life, because in the film there's this really cool scene, and I relate to this as well, because we talked about lamenting kind of the way America's going and stuff like that. And you in the film, there's a scene where your character anyway, and you did say that this was true. I saw in another place, I think in the Vanity Fair article that they did to you, which I didn't think was very fair, by the way. But anyway, you go to this group of children, you rescue some of them, and you leave some of them there because you can't take all of them, and then you return. Many of them, if not all of them, were killed. And there's that scene in the movie, and then after that, you go back home. And you're having a hard time assimilating to life back in America, life with your family and all that stuff. And I almost relate to that because my missionary career is nothing like yours. I'm a short-term missionary. I've taken people on mission trips in the past, but it's hard to go back to normal once you've seen the way things are going on in the rest of the world. So in that scene, I'll paint the picture, and then I kind of want to just hear what it was like for you to assimilate in that scene. After experiencing what you experienced in the Sudan and then coming back home, your daughter's asking whether or not she can get a limo for prom. And you just blow up, go off the handle, and because you're still reeling from what you just saw. And it's almost like, at least in my head, I would be thinking, you're asking here and fighting about a limo, and I just saw a pile of dead bodies of little black babies that have just been murdered.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have much of a relationship with my daughter. And a lot of it now is because me and her mom split up.
Right.
But, you know, I watched a movie here just a few months ago. And in the movie, the guy made the comment that really meant so much to me. He said, you know, it's hard to be a hero and a father. So maybe I wasn't that good of a father. But I saved a lot of children. And I don't think you could put a price on either one. Both of my brothers were good fathers. Maybe I wasn't there, but I saved thousands of children. Now I just wished my daughter would see that same movie, you know. And, yeah, not too much more to say on it.
No, I understand that. And I know it's cost you a lot. I think that's what people don't see. And it's probably one of the things that even if you told them, they'll never get.
Well, part 2, okay, Machine Gun Preacher. A lot of people says, well, what's so big about part 2? And I want all Christians to hear this. I never quit. That's what's so big about part 2.
Yeah.
I had over $30 million go through my hands. I don't even have $10,000 in the bank in my own personal account.
Yeah, I wonder if people really get this, because I don't know how to communicate this, but sometimes Christians have an idealized version of the world. And maybe there's some merit to that because we believe in hope, we believe in restoration, but we also live incredibly bubble wrapped lives.
Yeah.
And so when we hear that a guy like you that even has a temper, or a tough guy, or a guy with a gun, and it's hard for us to think about, and we say, oh, well, don't judge people, but then we're quick to judge people that we don't understand. We always judge what we don't understand. And I think having the experience of being able to go to Africa and being able to go to some of these countries changes my perspective on what I think about Scripture and what I think about the world and what I think about Jesus, and all that stuff. So to hear that you've had personal struggles, well, guess what? Every single person on the planet has.
Absolutely.
And very few people have seen the things that you've seen.
Yeah.
And that's a weight to carry, and people don't realize that because they've never experienced it.
Well, if you look at the movie Sniper, you brought it up. That guy, in my book, is a real hero.
For sure.
I mean,
you are
he
too.
is. No, but he's a real hero. He fought for our country. And, I mean, he could have come home many times, but he chose to stay there. But it was hard for him to function anywhere else besides there. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I knew exactly in the parts of the movie where he just didn't feel at home, I knew how he felt, where the parts of the movie where he was not a good dad.
Yeah.
I knew how he felt. But you want to know something? His children need to realize their dad was a hero.
Yeah.
He might have not have been a dad. What people dream this fairy tale dad is.
Yeah.
But their dad was a hero. And one of my kids in Africa, I looked over one day, and he had a shirt on. And I had to look twice because the shirt said, "My dad is a hero." And it made me start to cry.
Yeah.
Here's one of the kids in Africa wearing this shirt that came through old clothes, that we brought in, and said, "My dad is a hero."
Yeah. No doubt. You're absolutely a hero. Anybody who watches that movie can see the human side of Sam Childers, but they can also see a man who's decided to do something brave and something that very few people would have chosen to do.
Well, I always tell people, follow us on Facebook. Machine Gun Preacher is one of the Facebooks. There's 3 Facebooks out there. One is Samuel Childers, Sam Childers, Machine Gun Preacher. The one I take care of, but it can only have 5,000 friends. The other ones are like these fan sites.
Yep.
But Machine Gun Preacher, you can see update of everything that's going on. And the thing that I show people or end up telling people is watch our ministry. We're not quitting. We're not setting down. And you'll see the ministry is being structured now. I'm 58 years old. It's being structured now. My secretary that is here with us today, she's the lady that runs the entire nonprofit. Her husband is a pastor. So we got young people being brought into the ministry. So if something happens to me, this ministry is not going to go in vain. I believe there's a lot of ministries out there. The founders want to hold on to everything because they want to keep control. I want this ministry decades after I'm dead and gone to still be going on. There'll probably never be another Machine Gun Preacher, but Angels of East Africa can still go on.
Amen. All right, so give us the website.
machinegunpreacher.org. The easiest way to find out anything on us, and you don't even have to write this down. Some of you are going for a pen. Relax, sit down. You don't need to. Machine Gun Preacher. If you just Google Machine Gun Preacher, you'll get good stories and bad stories. You got to remember, I'm a bad guy, okay? But you can. It's easy to get a hold of us. If somebody's out there and you want to do something big for our organization, I want to tell you this.
Yep.
You have every right to ask us any question you would like to about money. You can call our office. You can ask to look at tax records. Now, don't do all of that if you're only going to give $50, you know.
Right.
But if you
Just
want to
give the
drill
50.
a well, if you want to know how much money on a dollar, you know, the average nonprofit is less than 15 cents on a dollar. We're more than 60 cents on a dollar.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's because of our for-profit businesses. I own a bike shop, motorcycle shop outside of Pittsburgh. So we build custom motorcycles. We sell all the riding gear, you know. So because of that, we're able to put all the proceeds that we make into the work in Africa, you know.
Yeah.
But call the office. You can go on a mission trip. You can see it for yourself, you know. So, all that stuff is out there for your knowledge to know you're sowing the right seed.
All right, and we'll put that down in the show notes. And then I want people to go on. They need to check out the film, but they need to support what you're doing, not only because it's changing lives, but also because as effective as that film was, you're making a second one, so they can give towards that.
If you look at the Bush Kids Project, you know, we need about $300,000 to finish it out for the year. I want people to realize that's a 12-month project. We were only hoping to save 1,000 children. We already in 4 months dewormed 2,000, treated almost 800 malaria. Those are children that were dying deep in the bush. No doctors, no nothing around.
No parents, just on their own?
No, a lot of them had parents, but
Okay.
I mean, they were just so poor, you know, it was really bad.
Oh, by the way, there's a scene in that documentary, too, where you have people who have parents who are trying to give their kids to you.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Because you're taking care of those kids and giving them
all
what
the
they
time.
can't get in the bush.
But the Bush Kids Project is something that we're really pushing, and
Yeah.
we got about 300,000 we got to raise yet. But that project alone, if another nonprofit had it in their hands, that project would be over $1 million project. You got to remember, I'm not going into the bush taking the medicine. We hired doctors that are doctors from Uganda. So we got 2 doctors from Uganda. We got a government man from Uganda. The security company that's there watching over everything is my company, the company that I founded. So we do security, but we're bringing in a blood lab, everything. So we're doing everything as if they're in a nearby city.
That's awesome. Yeah, so there's no doubt there are few causes I think as worthy as what you're doing, and with all of your bumps and bruises and warts, I know few people who live as much like Jesus as you do in terms of how you're rescuing and how you've sacrificed and how you've laid your life down on the line. So thank you for the many lives that you've impacted, and thank you for everything that you're doing for the kingdom.
All right. God bless you. Thanks you for having us on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for being here. We'll have to do it again.
God bless.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Our thanks again to our guests for being on the show today. Indie Thinker with Reed Huberman was brought to you by our sponsors. If you like what you heard today, please do us a big favor and give it a 5-star review and like it and share it with friends. And if you want to hear more awesome guests, make sure to check out past episodes. Indie Thinker is a nonprofit paid for by our sponsors and the generous gifts of people like you. In order to hear more great guests like you did today, please consider giving a tax-deductible gift by going to indiethinker.org. And just remember, your voice matters, but infinitely more when you think for yourself.